This is real life. After 75 7 truths. Every senior must hear. Aging is not the end. It's a chance to discover truths that can bring more meaning, strength, and connection into life. These lessons may change the way you see yourself and the world around you. Stay with us as we uncover them together. And before we begin, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Number 1. Solitude takes on a new shape. Warning signs of invisible isolation can surface quietly after the age of 75. Although often dismissed as a natural part of aging, this form of solitude is not merely the absence of company, but a deeper, more complex shift in social and emotional engagement. Studies show that loneliness in older adults is not only common, but has measurable effects on physical and cognitive health. According to research published by the National Institute on Aging, chronic loneliness is associated with a 29% increase in the risk of heart disease and a 32% increase in the risk of stroke. Additionally, prolonged isolation may accelerate cognitive decline, impair immune response, and increase the likelihood of depression and anxiety. What makes this reality especially difficult is that loneliness at 75 and beyond often hides behind routine smiles, polite nods, and even within families who visit occasionally. One may appear socially intact while internally experiencing a profound sense of invisibility. In fact, studies conducted at the University of California, San Francisco, found that 43% of adults over 70 regularly feel lonely, even when not technically alone. The true danger lies not in being physically alone, but in feeling emotionally disconnected from meaningful interaction. The neurological mechanisms behind this are increasingly clear. Human connection activates regions of the brain linked to reward and emotional regulation. When that stimulation fades, the body begins to register distress, often silently. Consider the story of Mr. Raymond, a retired train engineer from Ohio. At 77, he lived in the same house he built with his wife of 48 years, who had passed 3 years prior. His children, though loving, were busy with their own lives across the country. Outwardly, he maintained routines: morning walks, church on Sundays, grocery shopping every Thursday. But inside, he described a different experience. "It feels like I'm living in a photograph. Everything looks the same, but nothing moves." This kind of stillness, if left unaddressed, can have serious health implications. Fortunately, new models of care now recognize loneliness as a public health concern. The U.S. Surgeon General, in a 2023 advisory, officially labeled social disconnection as a significant threat to health and longevity, akin to smoking or obesity. Yet the solution is not as simple as increasing social events or adding visitors. The most effective strategies involve fostering purpose-driven interaction and emotional relevance. One evidence-based intervention is structured reminiscence therapy, where older adults participate in guided memory-sharing sessions, which can significantly reduce feelings of isolation and enhance life satisfaction. Community-based storytelling programs, elder mentoring groups, or virtual forums where seniors share expertise can all offer sustained psychological benefit. Engaging in such activities not only rebuilds a sense of identity, but also reaffirms a person's role in their social ecosystem. Safety is paramount in addressing this issue. Loneliness impairs decision-making and reduces motivation, which can lead to missed medications, neglect of nutrition, or even falls due to inattentiveness. To protect cognitive and emotional health, every aging adult should consider establishing a weekly connection goal. This may be as simple as one phone call, one shared meal, or one walk with a neighbor. What matters is consistency and emotional quality. The path forward requires conscious redesign of daily structure. Medical professionals recommend integrating at least 150 minutes of moderate physical activity per week, not only for cardiovascular health, but as a social tool. Group walks, light exercise classes, or gardening clubs provide double benefit: movement and connection. Moreover, Initiating intergenerational dialogue, such as recording family recipes with grandchildren or co-writing family stories, can spark meaningful engagement that is rooted in shared memory and love. To transform solitude from a threat into an opportunity for depth, clarity, and renewed connection, begin with a single, intentional act. Call someone today not just to say hello, but to ask a thoughtful question. Invite a friend for tea, not just to catch up, but to listen deeply. Rediscover the world not through its noise, but through its moments. In doing so, what once felt like an empty room may once again feel like a space of presence and peace. Number 2. Grief doesn't retire. At 76, Mrs. Eliza Carmichael hosted dinner parties every Saturday. Her laughter could light up a room, her kitchen smelled of rosemary and fresh bread, and her phone never stopped ringing. Her friends often marveled at her energy and grace, calling her the life of the neighborhood. But what most didn't know was that each Saturday morning, before the first guest arrived, Eliza sat quietly on her porch with tears welling in her eyes, still grieving the loss of her twin sister, who had passed away 2 years earlier. The contrast is striking. A vibrant social presence masking a private ocean of loss. This is the silent face of grief in later life. Unlike in younger years, where grief is often recognized, consoled, and ritualized, after 75 it becomes a quieter ache, sometimes dismissed or overlooked by others who assume that age brings acceptance. Yet grief does not abide by age or time. Instead, it can deepen with years, accumulating not only in the loss of loved ones, but also in the gradual erosion of shared traditions, homes filled with memories, and roles once held with pride. Scientific research affirms the long-term physiological and psychological effects of unresolved grief in older adults. A longitudinal study by the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health found that seniors experiencing prolonged grief were at significantly higher risk for inflammation-related diseases, impaired sleep cycles, and cognitive slowdown. Moreover, complicated grief has been linked to depressive symptoms, decreased immune function, and higher rates of hospitalization. The aging brain, while resilient, is still vulnerable to the neurochemical shifts caused by unresolved sorrow. What distinguishes grief after 75 is not its intensity, but its invisibility. In a culture that often celebrates resilience and independence in older adults, the expression of sorrow is sometimes mistaken for weakness or self-pity. As a result, many seniors internalize their pain, turning inward instead of reaching out. This self-containment, though culturally reinforced, can be dangerous. Emotional suppression contributes to social withdrawal, diminished self-worth, and poor overall health. However, acknowledging grief is not a sign of frailty. It is a form of strength. Community-based grief circles, journaling programs in senior centers, and peer support groups have shown significant mental health benefits. A study from the Journal of Aging and Mental Health observed that seniors who participated in structured grief counseling reported a 42% decrease in depressive symptoms and a 30% improvement in daily functioning over 6 months. Even private rituals hold therapeutic value. Lighting a candle weekly for a lost loved one, planting a garden in their memory, or creating a memory quilt from old clothes can help translate grief into tangible acts of remembrance and healing. These personal ceremonies reinforce identity, preserve memory, and validate the continuing bond with those who have passed. There is no expiration date on sorrow, nor is there shame in admitting its presence. The act of speaking grief aloud, to a friend, a therapist, or through written word, reclaims one's emotional agency. Seniors should be encouraged to initiate these conversations, especially in communities where loss is a common but unspoken thread. To move forward while honoring the past, one simple change can be profoundly healing. Schedule time each week to reflect on a loved one not in silence, but through voice. Share a memory at dinner. Write a letter you never intend to send. Say their name out loud during a walk. Through this gentle rhythm, grief becomes less of a burden and more of a companion, not something to escape, but something to carry with grace. Number 3. Your world might shrink, but your influence can expand. A recent report from the U.S. Census Bureau reveals that more than 60% of adults over the age of 75 spend the majority of their time in just 1 or 2 rooms of their home. This physical constriction, often caused by health limitations or reduced mobility, can quietly create a psychological boundary as well. When the external world becomes smaller, there is a growing risk that a person's sense of meaning, relevance, and capacity to contribute begins to shrink alongside it. But science tells a different story. Studies from the Rush University Medical Center have shown that older adults with a strong sense of purpose are twice as likely to avoid disability and cognitive decline compared to peers without that sense of meaning. Purpose, it turns out, is not defined by mobility, but by mindset. One remarkable case is Mr. Lionel James, an 80-year-old retired construction foreman from Birmingham, Alabama. After a hip injury confined him mostly to his recliner, he faced weeks of silence and self-doubt. But when his granddaughter began struggling with her math homework during a school shutdown, Lionel stepped in through a simple phone call. That single gesture evolved into a weekly online tutoring session, then a local news story, and eventually a virtual math club known as Grandpa Geometry, attracting students from across the region. Lionel's world hadn't just expanded again, it transformed. His living room became a digital classroom, his voice a source of confidence and learning. Neuroscientific research continues to support these outcomes. The human brain, especially in later life, thrives on activities that involve mentorship, storytelling, emotional reciprocity, and knowledge sharing. These forms of engagement activate the prefrontal cortex and limbic system, enhancing decision-making and emotional regulation. A longitudinal study published in the Journal of Aging and Health reported that seniors involved in regular volunteer or teaching roles displayed a 25% slower rate of memory decline over a 10-year period. Influence in this light is not an abstract idea. It is a tool for neurological resilience. Safety plays an integral role in this transformation. Many older adults avoid stepping into new roles or social exchanges due to fear of falling, of failure, or of unfamiliar technology. These concerns are deeply human and must be addressed with empathy, not pressure. Safe influence can take many forms: phone mentorships, handwritten advice columns for community boards, or faith-based discussion circles by invitation. When framed within a context of comfort and security, action becomes accessible, and confidence begins to regenerate. Physiologically, the body responds well to influence. The stress hormone cortisol, which contributes to chronic illness and emotional instability, decreases when individuals engage in meaningful interactions. A 2018 study in the Journal of Gerontology found that older adults participating in mentorship and guidance roles experienced a 22% reduction in cortisol levels over 6 months. Lower cortisol not only improves immune response, but also supports better heart health, mood stability, and sleep quality. Influence is not reserved for the physically mobile or technologically savvy. It resides in the power of presence, in the quiet dignity of offering perspective, and in the act of sharing one's lived experience. Reading to a child over the phone, sending weekly notes to a recovering friend, or guiding a caregiver through your own wisdom on aging, these are not small things. They are essential expressions of personal legacy. To rediscover influence in a limited world, begin by identifying one story, skill, or message worth sharing. Commit to one act per week that transmits this value, whether through voice, pen, or gesture. In doing so, the walls of limitation are no longer barriers but frames, highlighting the vibrant impact still waiting to unfold from within them. Number 4. Memory changes, and with it, our relationship to the past. Memory in later life is like an old family quilt. Some patches remain vivid and warm to the touch, while others have faded into soft blur. It may no longer be possible to recall the exact date of a long-ago vacation, but the smell of the ocean, the laughter from a picnic, or the feel of a child's hand in yours might come rushing back with sharp, unexpected clarity. This is not failure, it is evolution. The nature of memory does not simply deteriorate with age, it transforms. Understanding and embracing this change is key to maintaining mental health, identity, and emotional resilience after the age of 75. Research from the Alzheimer's Association shows that while certain types of memory, such as short-term recall or complex task coordination, tend to decline with age, others, like emotional memory, procedural memory, and long-term autobiographical memory, often remain remarkably intact. These preserved forms of memory serve not only as comfort, but also as bridges to meaningful connection. A 2021 study published in the journal Aging and Mental Health found that older adults who actively engaged in autobiographical storytelling reported significantly higher levels of psychological well-being and lower markers of cognitive stress. This presents an opportunity rather than a loss. The change in memory allows older adults to shift from being collectors of facts to curators of legacy. Telling stories, recalling past struggles and triumphs, and expressing life lessons are ways of redefining memory not as a fading asset, but as a living archive. Memory becomes less about what is forgotten and more about what is passed on. In this sense, memory takes on the role of a compass, not just pointing backward, but guiding younger generations forward. One remarkable example is Mrs. Viola Benson, age 82, a retired elementary school teacher from Oregon. Though she sometimes forgets where she placed her glasses or what she had for breakfast, she has begun writing a weekly column in her local paper titled Lessons from the Chalkboard. Each piece recounts a small moment from her decades in the classroom, often closing with a thoughtful reflection about compassion, discipline, or resilience. Her writing not only keeps her mind active but has sparked community conversations and inspired younger educators to write her letters of thanks. Her memory has become a gift, not a limitation. The brain continues to respond positively to memory-focused activities, especially those rooted in social and emotional meaning. Reminiscence therapy, intergenerational storytelling, and even creative expressions like painting or music based on memory have all been shown to enhance neural connectivity and support mental health. Neurologists have observed that these activities stimulate the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex, areas critical for emotional balance and narrative processing. Safety, both emotional and psychological, is essential when navigating memory changes. Fear of forgetting can lead to social withdrawal, embarrassment, or feelings of inadequacy. Creating spaces where stories are invited, not tested, is a powerful remedy. Family members and caregivers are encouraged to ask open-ended questions that invite reminiscing rather than testing accuracy. Instead of, "Do you remember what year that was?" try, "What did that moment feel like for you?" To begin honoring memory in a way that strengthens connection and identity, set aside one day a week to share a story, either verbally, through writing, or even as a drawing. Invite others to do the same. Record these moments. Frame them. Treat them as living pieces of your personal museum. In doing so, memory transforms from a private experience into a shared inheritance. The fabric of the quilt may change with time, but the warmth remains, stitched lovingly into every square. Number 5. Asking for help becomes both more necessary and more powerful. I would rather fall than ask for help. That was the startling statement made by Mr. Henry Caldwell, age 78, after his third visit to the emergency room for a preventable fall. His story is not rare. Across the United States, many adults over 75 carry a deeply ingrained fear of dependence, a belief that needing assistance equates to surrendering dignity. This mindset, often formed during decades of hard work, caregiving, or serving others, becomes a silent risk as the natural changes of aging demand new forms of support. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 1 in 4 Americans aged 65 and older falls each year, and falls are the leading cause of fatal and non-fatal injuries in older adults. Of these incidents, a large percentage involve individuals who were alone and unwilling to ask for help with daily activities, whether it be climbing stairs, reaching for items, or bathing safely. The reluctance stems not from vanity, but from a culture that celebrates independence while stigmatizing vulnerability. Yet science shows that recognizing the need for help and accepting it actually preserves autonomy. A groundbreaking study published in the Journal of Gerontology found that older adults who proactively use supportive services, such as mobility aids, home-delivered meals, or transportation assistance, maintain a higher level of functional independence over time compared to those who resist them. The researchers observed that these individuals also experience lower levels of anxiety and depressive symptoms. In other words, help is not a sign of failure. It is a strategy for longevity. There is also a neurobiological component. The chronic stress of hiding physical limitations or pushing beyond one's capacity triggers elevated cortisol levels, which are harmful to immune function, heart health, and cognitive clarity. By contrast, accepting help fosters a sense of safety and emotional trust, activating the parasympathetic nervous system, which promotes healing and balance. Number 5. Asking for help becomes both more necessary and more powerful. I would rather fall than ask for help. That was the startling statement made by Mr. Henry Caldwell, age 78, after his 3rd visit to the emergency room for a preventable fall. His story is not rare. Across the United States, many adults over 75 carry a deeply ingrained fear of dependence, a belief that needing assistance equates to surrendering dignity. This mindset, often formed during decades of hard work, caregiving, or serving others, becomes a silent risk as the natural changes of aging demand new forms of support. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 1 in 4 Americans aged 65 and older falls each year, and falls are the leading cause of fatal and non-fatal injuries in older adults. Of these incidents, a large percentage involve individuals who were alone and unwilling to ask for help with daily activities, whether it be climbing stairs, reaching for items, or bathing safely. The reluctance stems not from vanity, but from a culture that celebrates independence while stigmatizing vulnerability. Yet science shows that recognizing the need for help and accepting it actually preserves autonomy. A groundbreaking study published in the Journal of Gerontology found that older adults who proactively use supportive services, such as mobility aids, home-delivered meals, or transportation assistance, maintain a higher level of functional independence over time compared to those who resist them. The researchers observed that these individuals also experience lower levels of anxiety and depressive symptoms. In other words, help is not a sign of failure. It is a strategy for longevity. There is also a neurobiological component. The chronic stress of hiding physical limitations or pushing beyond one's capacity triggers elevated cortisol levels, which are harmful to immune function, heart health, and cognitive clarity. By contrast, accepting help fosters a sense of safety and emotional trust, activating the parasympathetic nervous system, which promotes healing and balance. Number 6. Touch still matters. Imagine sitting alone in a sunlit room, a favorite song playing softly in the background, a warm drink in hand, and yet, something essential feels missing. The phone hasn't rung in days, no one has dropped by, and while the heart still beats strong, the skin has forgotten what it feels like to be held. This scenario is not uncommon. For adults over 75, especially those living alone or widowed, the absence of physical connection can become an invisible burden, subtly eroding emotional and physiological health. Touch is more than a gesture. It is a biological necessity. The skin is the body's largest sensory organ, and it plays a central role in communicating safety, empathy, and connection. Scientific studies show that gentle, positive touch activates the vagus nerve, which regulates heart rate, digestion, and emotional calm. In a study conducted at the University of Miami's Touch Research Institute, older adults who received regular hand massages or therapeutic touch exhibited lower cortisol levels, improved immune function, and reduced symptoms of depression. Yet despite these proven benefits, touch becomes increasingly rare with age. Loss of a partner, shrinking social circles, or physical limitations can lead to what researchers term skin hunger, a deep, unmet need for tactile connection. This hunger often goes unspoken, not out of shame, but from the misconception that physical affection is reserved for the young. But the truth is, the need for touch does not disappear with age. It becomes more profound. Consider the story of Mr. Caleb Morris, 87, who moved into assisted living after his wife's passing. Despite a supportive staff and daily visits from his daughter, he confessed that what he missed most was someone holding my hand without a reason. That simple human contact, he said, made him feel remembered, real, and safe. Recognizing this, the staff implemented a companion moment program, encouraging brief, respectful physical connection during conversations. Within weeks, residents like Caleb reported feeling more relaxed, connected, and emotionally present. Touch also plays a protective role against loneliness. Physical connection releases oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone, which counters feelings of isolation and stress. It enhances mood, supports cognitive clarity, and even lowers blood pressure. These benefits are not dependent on intense contact. A gentle touch on the shoulder, a warm handshake, or even the act of petting a therapy animal can provide meaningful neurological feedback that supports well-being. Safety and respect are essential when fostering touch in older adulthood. Every individual has different comfort levels, and consent must always guide interaction. Within families, this can be as simple as offering a hug before leaving a visit or holding a loved one's hand during a walk. In community settings, activities like group dance, chair yoga with partnered stretches, or massage therapy sessions can integrate touch in ways that are respectful and therapeutic. Technology can also play a role. New developments in haptic feedback devices and robotic companions simulate physical touch and are being studied for their potential to alleviate touch deprivation in isolated seniors. While not a replacement for human contact, these innovations open doors for connection where physical distance cannot be bridged. To begin reconnecting through touch, take a small, conscious step. Extend a hand to someone during conversation, ask for a shoulder rub during family time, or schedule a gentle massage. For those who live alone, even placing a warm compress over the chest or hugging a soft pillow can activate the body's natural calming mechanisms. In a world that often forgets the power of physical closeness, choosing to reach out and allowing others to reach back can restore more than comfort. It can restore humanity. Purpose can take many forms. It does not require founding an organization or publishing a book. It can be as simple as mentoring a younger person, caring for a pet, tending a garden, or serving as a spiritual anchor in one's community. Neuroscience shows that engaging in purpose-driven activity lights up the brain's reward circuitry, reducing stress and enhancing overall well-being. A 2020 study in the journal Psychosomatic Medicine demonstrated that seniors who engaged in purposeful volunteer activities had lower levels of inflammatory markers in the blood, which are linked to heart disease and cognitive decline. Purpose also builds psychological immunity. During times of loss, illness, or social change, those with a strong sense of why they matter are more resilient. They bounce back faster, make clearer decisions, and report a deeper sense of contentment, even amid limitations. This strength is not inherited. It is cultivated through habits, reflection, and small acts of giving. Safety and sustainability are crucial in defining purpose in older adulthood. What once felt purposeful at 45 may no longer suit the energy or health realities of 78. That's why experts recommend a model of adaptive purpose, where individuals adjust their roles and expressions of meaning to fit the present moment. For example, a retired educator may no longer teach in classrooms, but could lead discussion groups at the library or mentor students online. A grandparent may no longer travel widely, but can offer cultural storytelling and family history as a treasured inheritance. To begin embracing purpose as a lifelong companion, start with one reflective question. What is something meaningful that no longer requires strength, only sincerity? Then offer that gift to someone this week. Purpose need not be grand to be powerful. In fact, in the quieter chapters of life, it is often the softest voices that echo the loudest. In choosing to share what remains within, a person over 75 doesn't step away from relevance. They step into legacy. Life after 75 is not an ending, but a revelation. It teaches us that solitude can feel heavy, but connection, one call, one shared walk, can bring life back into motion. It shows us that grief never retires, yet when spoken aloud, grief transforms into love carried forward. It reminds us that even if the world feels smaller, our influence can grow larger through mentoring, storytelling, or simply offering perspective that no book or search engine can replace. Memory may change, but it is not lost. It shifts from dates and details into treasures of feeling, wisdom, and legacy. To share those memories is to pass on light. Asking for help, once feared as weakness, is in truth an act of strength, because accepting support protects independence and honors life itself. Touch still matters, whether in a hug, a hand held, or a gentle moment of presence. It is proof that we are not invisible, but human, worthy of closeness at every age. And purpose, perhaps most of all, does not retire. Purpose is the heartbeat that keeps us alive inside, whether found in writing, teaching, caring, or simply being there for someone else. These truths are not lessons for seniors alone. They are lessons for us all. They remind us to honor dignity, to reach out when others feel unseen, and to live with meaning no matter our age. A society that listens to its elders, that embraces their grief, their wisdom, their need for touch and purpose, is a society that values humanity itself. These truths are not lessons for seniors alone. They are lessons for us all. They remind us to honor dignity, to reach out when others feel unseen, and to live with meaning no matter our age. A society that listens to its elders, that embraces their grief, their wisdom, their need for touch and purpose, is a society that values humanity itself. If this video brought you value, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your experiences and reflections in the comments. We can all learn from one another. And if you'd like to continue receiving meaningful video like this, please subscribe today so you won't miss what comes next. Thank you for staying with us until the end, and may you always walk forward in health, peace, and purpose.